Okay, everybody, this is the last video lecture in the chapter of theory and methods. This is video lecture number 6. This one, I just want to do some broad strokes. I mean, it is important that you understand some of the basics about research methods, though I don't think I became remotely interested in research methods till long into my graduate school career. But the point is that there is a systematic way that's accepted intellectually, that's accepted theoretically by development by developmental psychologists as to how we come to the conclusions. And that is the key. That is what makes a science. If you remember back from high school biology or psychology or sociology, where we talk about the scientific research methods. And that is we make observations, we hypothesize, we systematically collect the data, and we analyze that data and we try to apply it to theory. So when we're talking about human growth and development, because we're talking about people, there are lots of variables we cannot control the way we could if we were talking about cancer cells or plants, or honestly even animals. We can control the environment we can control the environment better. Some of the basic designs are, we have case studies. Psychologists use case studies more than other social sciences. Ethnographic studies, that's where we're simply making an objective observation. A participant observation is when I go into the field and I do what everybody else is doing and then I make observations about it. Correlation studies are where I take two groups and I look for correlations. Correlation does not mean causation. We really cannot prove cause, but what we can say is that when this is associated with this, we have more of that. A great example of a correlation is, it's actually an example of how correlation doesn't work, is that there is a place in the United States where there are a lot of flamingos and there also are a lot of children. Now, that would be Florida. That would be Disney World. That is a correlation. These two things simultaneously come together. But our theory would tell us that flamingos really don't have anything to do with babies, but they do go together. Another correlation we see is that that living in a home where there are two committed adults do better academically than living in a home where there are not two committed adults, right? There's two adults is correlated with better grades. We'll talk more about correlation. And experiments are when we give half of the group something that we don't give the other half of the group. And those are those are problematic when we start talking about people. Okay, so some of these can be longitudinal. We can follow people over a long period of time. Some of them we can just take a snapshot now. Okay, so I'll just sort of move on from that. When we've already talked a little bit about qualitative versus quantitative. Qualitative research is where I'm measuring the qualities of something, right? So I'm measuring how big something is, or how small something is, or how dense, or I'm measuring some sort of descriptive factor. Quantitative are when I'm actually measuring, I can precisely count something. I'm trying to think of a good example. I think in your textbook it talks about the difference between the number of teeth a child has versus, that would be a quantity. Quality would be how big you are, how tall you are. Quantity would be how many teeth. I think. Anyway, there's no quiz questions about that. And then I've already talked a little bit about ethics in research. The point is, again, that when we're talking about people, we have to be ethical, and we can't inflict pain. The question about why, and this I'm pretty sure is either an exam question or a quiz question, about Albert, about the little child. That was in Watson's research. And Albert is a good example of unethical research because, again, Albert did not give consent and it caused harm. It did not protect Albert from harm. Other variables are avoidance of deception. It's considered unethical to unnecessarily lie in order to get someone to participate in a study. Privacy, that if you want people to be honest, you have to protect their confidentiality, not use their name, that subjects should be allowed to say, nope, I don't want to do this anymore. And this is a problem, especially for like longitudinal studies. My husband was a part of a smoking study that was supposed to go on for like 10 years. There's a phenomenon called attrition, and you have a lot of people in the beginning who do what you asked. He had to like send them cigarette butts and a package of cigarettes and answer a survey, and they were going to follow him for 10 years. And he did this for about 2 years. But after a while, he sort of lost interest, and that's unfortunate for the researchers. I feel obligated as a social scientist that whenever I'm invited to do a survey, I feel like I should participate, because I like to say that's somebody's dissertation, that's somebody's master's thesis. Someone is collecting that data for a reason. So I feel a particular obligation. And then, what does it say? Correct undesirable. So this again speaks to Albert. The reason that Albert would be unethical, who was a child, he really couldn't give consent, which is another reason it's considered unethical to study prisoners or to study disabled people who may not be able to give consent. All right, well, this wraps up the chapter on theory and research, and I will see you over in chapter 3. Thank you for listening.